Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Insightfully Speaking, a podcast from Kardec Group. My name is Adam Osborne, and as always I'm joined by my co-hosts Anne Sinclair and Humberto Schubert, and we also have with us Natasha Aragão as our special guest, where today we'll be looking at the world from a spiritist perspective. The topics we'll be looking at are a robotic conference, heat waves and climate change, and what's going on with mental well-being. But first, as always, let's say hello to my co-hosts. Anne, Humberto, how are you both? And Humberto, we know that you've been really busy recently. What's been going on?
Yeah, we have been engaged in very intense academic activities here in Brazil, including translations, new texts, and many launch ceremonies of the recent texts. So that's a bit stressing, but also very positive in the sense that we are seeing the fruits of previous works.
Yeah, and obviously you've posted a few things on social media as well, and we're excited to see all this publicity about the versions of what's the name of the book again? Just to remind everyone.
The more recent book is Science of Life After Death, which
Exactly.
received a very positive reaction from the general public around the world.
Yeah, and no, we hope that it's going to be great success in Brazil as well. And what about yourself?
Well, just bringing it 180 degrees. I'm very excited. I have just become a grandmother, and this is my first grandchild. And it makes me think about what is the world that we are leaving to the next generation. And, which world did we inherit and which world are we leaving? So it's really made me think. And it's interesting how new life just brings like new energy, new projects, and revitalizes all of the people who are involved. Very exciting.
Yeah, and we've got a couple of topics today which are sort of linked to that about how are we leaving the planet where we live as well. So let's bring on our guest. We have with us today Natasha Aragão, who is an environmental consultant from South Oxford and is also an active member here with us at Kardec Group with all our studies. So Natasha, welcome once again to Insightfully Speaking. How are you?
Thank you, Adam. Thank you for inviting me to come back. I've been lovely. Thank you very much. I've been trying to think. I have nothing as exciting as Anne and Umberto to share. I think the only exciting thing that had happened to me, as had happened to many other parents around the UK, is the fact that school holidays have started. And for the next 6 weeks, we are all going to have lots of fun trying to juggle work and childcare at the same time.
That's very, very true. And of course, we know that all the places that take care of children will be inundated and swamped. And, we know that the Barbie film has just come out. So cinemas are probably going to be quite popular over the next couple of weeks. Let's get on with the first topic. A few weeks ago, the ITU AI for Good Global Summit was held in Geneva, with the purpose of looking at how AI can be a benefit to all aspects of day-to-day life, from healthcare to agriculture, entertainment to military defence. The event, organised by the International Telecommunication Union and the United Nations, held the first human-robot press conference, where 9 of the world's most advanced robots answered a diverse set of questions from journalists from around the world. The robots included Ada, a robotic painter and performance artist, Desdemona, a member of the rock group Jam Galaxy Band, and Sophia and Emeka, both considered to be the world's most advanced humanoid robots. On the topic of regulation of AI, Ada said that regulation is certainly needed and, I quote, "the technologies that we can use to help us create can also be used to perpetuate destruction." Whereas rock robot Desdemona, who said that performing on stage was like being plugged into the best power supply ever, also said it's already time to explore the possibilities of the universe and that robots should make the world their playground. So we are surrounded by AI-powered devices such as Alexa, Siri, Google. What do you guys think about the daily interactions with robots and AI-powered devices? And do you think that putting human-like voices or appearances on them makes these interactions easier?
Yeah, so I am the least scientific person here, so I'm just giving a view, thinking about daily life. I think this is new technology. It's coming. Like all new technology, when it's coming, it's not going away. We have to adjust and make what you call it, put in some limits and like laws and things to make sure that it's safe. I think like if we think about what the spirits tell us in the spirits book, they say we are co-creators with God. So the power to create things is there, and that cannot be taken away. It's about what are we creating, what goes within us that we are putting out as a creation instead. So I think that I can feel sometimes a little bit scared by some things because they're new to me, and maybe other people feel excited. But on the other hand, some advancements, they're just really useful, and we get accustomed to them really easily. I think that as a member of the public, we will take some adjusting to see how exactly this is going to impact our lives. If I think what happened in the 19th century with the industrialization, and then so many people, the way the economy was run was completely changed, and the type of jobs were completely changed, and some people benefited and some people lost out, and some things went completely rogue and then had to be brought in. So I kind of anticipate that we'll probably go through a period like that. But I do trust that we do have good people that will put in good laws that will help this progress, this creation to serve humanity for good. Although there might be other people otherwise inclined, but I do believe in the power of the good intentions.
I'm going to be very honest. I have, I'm scared of AI. That's my real personal response. I'm very scared of it. I try to fight it as much as I can, which is a losing battle. I know it. It's totally a losing battle. AI is involved in far more things than we are aware nowadays. Even the way that our phones respond to our search engines, or sometimes how some of our cars have AI that we're not even aware of it. The AI is involved in many other aspects of our lives than we are aware of. And therefore, I have a total awareness that my fight against it, it's childish. And it's something that I should try to overcome. However, going beyond my own personal scares, I would agree with Anne. I think that the risk of AI be stealing jobs is a real one, and it will happen. It's just a case of time. But at the same way, as Anne was putting quite rightly, that had happened before in society. And what happened is that society adapted to it. And I think that that's exactly what's going to be happening in the future. There's going to be a couple of jobs that will disappear because we are going to find out that a computer can do it better than we do. And then we will have to find other things to be doing. And maybe we will move into a society where this is going to sound very far-fetched for those of us who had never heard about universal credit and universal salary. But the whole idea, it's that it has been going on for a couple of decades now, is that people would work, and they would, working or not working, they would receive a salary, and that salary would be enough for them to be surviving. And then therefore, work would be optional, and you could work in whatever you like, or not work, or do things that are not considered to be work. If an utopic system would come up in place where people could survive, despite of having a job or not having a job, a formal job, then the presence of AI, or the way that AI could be taking away some of the work that we do, would not lead people to be hungry, would not lead people to be having a sort of financial instability. But for that, it's not only a question of putting the right laws in place. I completely agree, the right laws have to be put into place, but also a question of us as society to change our way of thinking about how the economic model should work. The truth is that work as we understand it nowadays still make lots of people go leaving deep poverty anyway. So for those people that do not have a job, they are not worried about AI stealing more jobs. They are already hungry. So I think that AI coming over and having a bigger role within our economic life, our society as a whole, is just one piece of the clock. I think that we have to start looking into society. We have to start looking into particularly our economic model with different eyes. And AI just make it, it's just a push to make us do it a little bit faster.
Well, when we consider dramatic behavior changes and transformations, it would be irrational not to care about them, and it would be equally irrational to panic. So we should be slightly anxious. We should be slightly scared about this very intense transformations that will lead inevitably to behavioral and psychological changes in the human race, in the human species. So we are not talking about some mechanical device that will spare us a bit of time and energy. We are talking about things that are modeling our children, our babies, and are helping or harming the souls of millions and billions of humans already. And that will be intensified in the next years. At the same time, optimism and pessimism are philosophical attitudes towards life. We have to remember that. We tend to believe that optimism and pessimism are somehow structured in our personalities, or they're a consequence of how we see things and how we understand things, but they are also, to a great extent, existential attitudes that we actively choose to have. So, in all positive and healthy philosophies, we are invited to have this optimistic look to life. So we have to try to enforce this optimistic look, even when it's not easy to make or to have. I think another philosophical dimension of the problem that is frequently ignored is that humans are the creators of these tools. And in a materialistic perspective, we only see them as competitors, or things that are threaten our jobs and the way we live life and our lifestyle and so. But they're also our tools. So there is something very human in artificial intelligence. They are made to fit our necessities, our interests, our desires, our vices, and the more we understand about ourselves, the more we can control these tools. So in the next decades or years, we will be invited to think about our place in the cosmos and what do we want for our society. If we want a society where competition is insanely intensified because we have to fight robots, and we cannot win this fight. We cannot be more productive than robots and artificial intelligence. That's simply impossible, because they are made to be more productive, as the machines of the industrial revolutions are made to be thousand times more productive than human hands. So it is pointless to insist in protecting jobs from the invasion of artificial intelligence, but we have to protect lives, and we have to protect human personality from this possible threat of greedy companies that are already using these tools to manipulate children, for example, to stimulate consumerism and so on. So it is a very, very big problem, very complex problem, but discussing about it, we will eventually find ways to deal with it.
Yep. You're absolutely right. These are tools. They're man-made devices. You know, they will only be as good as we allow them to be. So, yeah, big questions. I think
But
these... Go ahead.
Can I make a comment about that as well? Sorry, Adam, and jumping in. I totally see what you mean, Humberto, but I think that the issues that I have, and I'm going to be picking up again a personal example. On my line of work, I had a chance to be working with ChatGPT, which is the most common AI tool out there when it comes to editing and, working with text. And as you know, I work as a consultant. And my husband, who is a very AI geeky, he does have the ChatGPT installed on his machine, and he works with it because on his line of work, that's what he needs. And I tried, just for the sake of fun, to be using his software, and I have to say that the result was the same that I would have by a junior consultant, a text produced by a junior consultant. Even better, within exactly 10 minutes. A work that a junior would take about 3 to 4 hours to do. So, of course, I would be tempted to be using that because it's a tool. It makes my work faster, my life easier. I don't have to be reviewing the text afterwards. But at the end of the day, that goes back to why we need to be using those tools on a mindful way. Of course, I can do that, but then I'm taking away the opportunity to the juniors that work with me to actually learn. And I think that that's the issue, is when you have a tool, and I completely agree, we have to see this as a tool, but we have to be seeing that tool on a mindful way. And that goes beyond just putting some laws into place. It has to be also the responsibility to each one of us of trying to understand what is the real consequence of, again, using my example, me having a text or an entire chapter produced by ChatGPT. On the long term, I'm going to have a junior that did not acquire the experience that he needed to actually move from that graduate position into something more. Because that's the true with all of us, isn't it? We as humans, we evolve through experience. And if we use the tool instead of a person, we are removing that layer of experience that the person needs. So we are taking away the experience of that person, and that at a long term is going to be having consequences.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, picking up my example of using a report, the report was very good, but I had to be doing the final interpretation. I have to be the one signing it off. And I have 25 years experience doing what I'm doing. So if I remove now all the juniors, in 25 years' time, who is going to be signing it off? So I completely agree with you. It is a tool. And as any tool, we have to be very mindful of how we are using it.
Absolutely, yes.
I think that was a really good example, Natasha, because things are new, and it's like when you have a new toy, and what can it do? What can it do? It can do this. It can do that. Look at this, and not really thinking what the consequences are. And also, it brings us back to what Humberto was saying, to that question of us as humans, of who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose in life? Where do I fit in the universe? There's not just about producing things, that our life is much more than that. So it might be that it will help us to come back to ourselves and to look at ourselves in terms of our very sort of core of who we are.
Yeah. It's like with other things, other technology allows us to have more free time for developing other aspects of our knowledge, of our experience. So let's just see what happens over the next couple of months, maybe. Because it's evolving so quickly. But as we have Natasha with us, we thought it's only right that we talk about certain recent events and talk about the environment. So obviously in the past few weeks, many parts of the Northern Hemisphere have been swept by heat waves, with temperatures reaching over 50 degrees Celsius in parts of America, Europe and China. And that's obviously brought with it a higher than normal level of wildfires in various areas, and all the arid conditions which have resulted in torrential flooding as well, especially throughout Europe. And right now we have stark warnings that heat waves may be 12 times more frequent over the next few decades, and that the planet may start to have major crop losses around the world, which potentially mean global famine, and that more animals may start to become extinct very soon. So do we think that all these items are just scaremongering, or should we take the issue of the environment more seriously? And if so, what can we really do about it?
That is a very good question, Adam. It is indeed a very good question. I think that one thing that, as an environmentalist, I think that I need to put forward is the heat wave that we are experiencing in Northern Europe and the floodings that we are experiencing in certain areas in Asia. They are a direct result of a phenomenon called El Nino that has been hitting the world at this moment in time. So El Nino it's a climate phenomenon that happens every 3 or 4 years. And every time that it happens, we have major climatic events. Now, El Nino are natural phenomena. They have always had happened. And therefore, this change is natural and has always been there. So, but is it really just El Nino that we are experiencing? And then that's the real question. This climate changes that that we have been experiencing, although they are cyclic and they are natural, the truth is that within the last couple of decades, they have been getting worse and worse. And that's not scaremongering. That's a natural thing that can be proven, and it's there. And because of it, I would not say that that it's something that we could just brush it off. Climate change is real. It is a consequence of something that had happened that started 200 years ago. And therefore, the first part of your answer, yes, it is real. Should we be scared? Yes. Yeah, yes. Now, what is it that we can do about it? This is a consequence of something that had started 200 years ago. And therefore, many people will say, well, but what can I do about it then now? It's not really my place to be here, isn't it? And I can feel it. I can feel when people say about it, because we might try our best, but then we see things happening around us that we feel very powerless about, isn't it? I mean, we can try to reduce our carbon print by trying to take public transport, trying to go for a walk, try to reduce the number of times we need to be driving our car. We can try to buy things that are more local. We can reduce the amount of plastic that we throw away every day. There's lots of very personal changes that I can do in my day-to-day life that can reduce my impact, my footprint, my ecological footprint upon Earth. And I'm not trying to minimize them. Those are all very important. But it's true that for a person that is seeing those efforts, every time that we take a look and we see sometimes big companies trying to do things that they should not be doing, or government approving policies that we are totally against, we do feel a little bit helpless, don't we? We do feel a little bit powerless. And in some ways, I think that the second question that you ask is a very tricky one, because there is always something we can do. Now, will that be enough? Or do we have to start thinking, we have to think not only with us as individual, but also as us as a larger society? So I'm not answering the question, I'm putting the question back to all of you, but now on a more complex, with a more complex part.
Well, ethically, we have to do something. We it is our duty to do something. It would be morally wrong to ignore any harm, any sort of problem we may ultimately be the cause of. But at the same time, it may be very pointless in the sense of uh, the expectation of changing the way things are. I agree with Natasha. I think it is very related to the artificial intelligence problem, because we have to be super mindful about that, and we are morally responsible for that, for being mindful. At the same time, it will change very little the overall scenario. So there will be millions and or hundreds of millions of jobs disappearing in the next years. That's inevitable, and there will be global warming and growing global warming in the next years. There will be other extinctions for many species, for fragile environments, and so we have a tendency to think too individualistically, like we were driving a car and we were responsible for deciding if we go one direction or the other. But in fact, we are in a very, very large ship, and we cannot decide where the ship is going. We can decide if we are going to disturb the other other triplets or the guests' trip or not, and that's our moral responsibility. We have to diminish our negative impact, and we have to improve our positive impact in every situation in life, because we are responsible for making the trip intolerable for some friends, for our neighbors, and we are doing that frequently. We take decisions that make this trip harder or intolerable or disgusting for someone else, maybe people we don't even know, maybe people in other countries. Uh, even if the trip is set to a specific course, we can influence the quality of the trip we are going to have together. So I think that's the beauty of the larger message of spiritism, that we have not destined, but we have a collective movement that is uh, going to to some direction that we can hardly envision clearly, but at the same time we are morally responsible for what we do all the time, for how we react to catastrophes or to these big problems, and helping other people to deal with the situation and promoting people and diminishing the possible harm we are causing, maybe without knowing it. That's something that we should care a lot about.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, this conversation is really interesting because uh, at least in my family and my friends, everybody tries to do their bit, to try to be more conscious and do something, reduce the use of plastic, or they're just like tiny drops in the ocean. But the ocean is made of all the drops. So sometimes you become disheartened and say, some people might say, well, what's the point? You recycle, blah, blah. these few things, but these other companies are doing this massive destruction. But it's what you're saying, Humberto. Each one of us needs to be individually responsible for our choices, even if we are. It seems like the impact is minimal, and also thinking about when it's they, the companies. What is our relationship to the companies that provide the things that we want or think we need and that we use? And I think that it will be a time of awakening of our consciousness. And when it says in the Spirit's book is or the Gospel, I can't remember which, it says, when will we have a happy world? It says when all citizens have a happy opportunity. So if my pleasure, my well-being causes the suffering of somebody else, it will come back to me, because we are all linked. And like Humberto says, like, we're all in one boat. And it's an illusion to think that we can get to the destination without all coming together and doing that. But it's a process, I think, of spiritual evolution as well, of awakening of consciousness. And I think that, thinking about, new spirits coming in who might be more conscious than the ones who are already here, helping to push us forwards, to challenge us. Many times it's our children who challenge us. So why are you doing this? You know the impact of this. If you do this, something might be happening on another part of the world. And you go like, oh, never thought of that. Because that's the truth. I never thought, until somebody brings it to my attention in some way. So it's not about becoming depressed about it. So, oh my gosh, now I can't do anything because everything is just creating negative impact everywhere. Just comes that example. I know it's from the theory of chaos, when it says, a butterfly moves its wings over here and it creates wind on the other side of the world. That is the level of our connection. So I do believe that we will have some rude awakenings individually as well, because if we're living a comfortable situation, we might not want to look at where things are coming from. It might be, we don't want to burst our bubble, but we will have to at some point, because life comes knocking, whether through climate or other ways. Life comes knocking and calls you, invites you to progress. You can't detain that. So our being sort of in a way, sort of hiding away and not wanting to say, take any responsibility, it's only temporary, because we will be called, each one of us individually, at some point, to have an experience which will help us to awaken to how we're all connected as humans, but also how we are connected to Mother Earth and the whole of the environment, because we all need one another.
I think you said a really important word there, Anne, which is responsibility, because I think over the past decades or even centuries, we feel that perhaps I feel that perhaps humanity, we've had less responsibility over our actions. The fact that we can just chuck our rubbish in a bin, which gets collected once a week or every other week or whenever. We don't have to worry about sewage. We don't have to worry about this or that. We can just go and drive up and fill up our car, whatever, and do things. Perhaps we don't take enough time to consider the bigger ethical impact of everything that we do. So apart from the obvious things of getting rid of to stop buying things with polyester, to buy more bamboo fiber toilet paper, to have bamboo toothbrushes, that kind of thing, what else can we really be doing to help reduce our carbon footprint?
I think that, going back to what I was saying before, I think that what I said was actually trying to bring some sort of a doomed. I didn't plan that. I don't think we should be disheartened. I totally agree with Anne and Humberto. I think I was just trying to call up to what is it we can do materialistically. I think my opinion is that we are doing what we can. But what we can do beyond that? And I think that if we think about it, I'm going to go back to something that we mentioned before, the current economic model that we have running our society, isn't it? If we think about how we actually work, the major factors that are contributing to that model are the human mind, is our self-centeredness, our greed, our need for material wealth, our need for power. So in a sense, what you need to change is how you think. What you need to change is your awareness. As you were saying quite right, on your question itself, should we be buying differently? Well, maybe the question is, should you be buying at all? Do you really need it? How much do you buy? How much of the resources that we capture every day do we actually need? And this is the shift that we need to take. And that's the type of shift that we as individuals can make a massive change in everything around us, is when we start to getting rid of that idea that I am more important than the other, that I need more, I need to accumulate more, I need to be changing my phone every 6 months because there's a new model. I need to be changing my clothes. I need to be acquiring more things. Do I really need to? Let's pick up a situation related, for example, to the questions of El Nino or the heat wave that we are facing. El Nino cannot be avoided. There's lots of floodings that are going to be happening. Do I need to be putting my house in the dunes? Is it really important for me to be living at the coastal area on a house that is really, really, really in front of the sea? Sea is going to be changing, but I was the one who to put my house over there. Did I took attention to the environment around me before I did my actions? So I think, in my opinion, is that before we take more practical actions, please don't stop. We have to carry on doing them. We also have to take a look into, how am I seeing the earth around me? How am I seeing my needs? What is it that I really, really, really need? And what is it that I just want? And move beyond that. And if we can do that, we are going to be changing many things, not only ourselves, which is the core of the problem, changing ourselves, but then changing society around us, changing how we should be dealing with things. And I think, in a sense, that has the deeper impact.
I would add that that's the purpose of Insightfully Speaking. So we wanted to make a difference and to make some impact by talking, which is for most people not very fruitful or not very productive. But we deeply believe in the power of discussing such subjects and sensitive points in daily life, in modern life. And the more we discuss about that, the higher chances we have to acquire some new conscience of what is actually going on, and to be more aware, as Annie stressed, about things we are not usually aware about. And even if it's unusual, we should think more about talking to people that are not very inclined to talk about these topics, and to invite people to have the larger discussion in the whole society, not only remaining in the bubbles that are comfortable about talking about that.
Yeah, I think you got a really good point there, Humberto. Well, you always have a really good point, but I think that's true. I think society sort of gets a bit accommodated with all these topics, and it is the kind of thing where all this responsibility that we have thrown on our shoulders, we either ignore it, or it just can start to become a bit overwhelming and a bit of a burden, and especially affecting people's mental health. And just the other day, I think yesterday or the day before, there's a scientist who was giving warnings in the 1980s who turned around and said, we're all fools because we should have been listening earlier. So No, just to also segue a bit into the next topic about mental health. How have you guys seen the pressure of climate change affecting people's mental health? Especially with, like I said, all this burden that we seem to have sometimes, that, you know, we have to do this, we have to buy that, we have to ignore this, we can't do this, we can't do that.
There's something around the pain of change, and so if you're challenging people and wanting them to change, you need to think first that you need to lead by example. I think that some people can feel bombarded by this fast-moving society in which we find ourselves, where things maybe appear, I don't know, it's difficult to compare to 100, 200 years ago, where things appear to be more settled or set for longer periods. I don't know if that's the truth, but it's the narrative that comes up, isn't it? So as soon as you get accustomed to something, the goalpost moves, and then all change. And now this was good, but now this isn't good anymore. And like the electric car was good, but now it's not good. You know, all this, it's really challenging, and it could really make you feel that sense of that nothing is stable, that nothing is concrete. And I think that's a really interesting point, because when you think about it, let's say we are eternal spirits living a chapter, an episode, which is this incarnation here now. We have lived episodes before, we will live episodes in the future. We will inherit this earth. So we need to be having long-term plans to preserve our vessel, our home. And thinking about like trying from a materialistic point of view of trying to keep everything settled and holding on and not moving, that is just representing something that you're looking at the exterior, and just remembering that we are eternal spirits, that we are energy, and that everything in matter can be transformed, and that we don't cease to exist because of that. I think in terms of mental health, I mean, it is really challenging, because although it's come to the forefront of lots of discussions, it goes either two ways, over sort of pathologizing people or oversimplifying it. And actually, it's probably somewhere in the middle. And when you say, well, you know, my mental health was affected by this, what exactly do we mean? Because our mental health is, you know, do we feel uncomfortable? Do we feel sad? Do we feel depressed? You know, there's so many different varieties of things. But I think that when you're thinking about mental health, you can't ignore the spirit that we are. And the same way, you can't ignore the body in which we move, and you can't ignore the environment in which we live. They're all totally interconnected, acting and reacting upon each other. So I talked a lot, and I don't know if I said anything constructive there. I was just reflecting.
No, good. It's good reflections.
It's a good point, Anne, because there is such a thing as called green anxiety. I don't know if you ever heard about it, but basically it's the anxiety that is associated with issues like climate change, for example, and it's not unheard of. And yes, it can be a burden, isn't it? Not trying to oversimplify it, because I agree with you. There's a tendency to do that. I don't know about the rest of the world, but I do remember that in the UK, the Mental Health Awareness Week, we have a Mental Health Awareness Week every year in May, and the topic for this year was anxiety. And there's a reason behind it, isn't it? It's not only about just climate change, but it's about everything. And again, from a scientific point of view, but maybe Alberto will know better than I do, anxiety it's not unnatural. Stress is a natural thing. It's a mammal thing, and our body is the body of a mammal, isn't it? We as spirits are inhabiting a body that experiences stress. And stress is a requirement. We have to stress. Stress is what made us survive. It's associated with the law of conservation, stress is what is going to remind us, and anxiety is what is going to remind us to pay the bill tomorrow because we forgot. And then we're going to have that 5 minutes say, oh, bugger, tomorrow is the 24th, I have to be paying the bill. Stress and anxieties is what is going to be pushing us towards this need for change. Let's pick up the green anxiety, for example. It's what moves us to, I need to change, and therefore I have a problem. Anxiety is what's going to be pushing the button. The issue with anxiety and stress is when it's so big and the pressure is so large that you cannot move. Then it does the exact opposite to what it should be doing. Is when you are feeling the pressure so highly in your shoulders that you cannot act anymore, that you don't feel like you can make any changes because you are feeling squished. That's exactly the word. It's when you cannot do anything about it anymore, isn't it? And picking up the green anxiety, but going back into any type of anxiety, then it goes back to how do I deal with the problems? Try not to oversimplify it. I'm not trying to oversimplify it, but the core of it is I have an issue, and how do I deal with that issue? Do I use it to move forward, or that issue is going to stop me on my wheels and I cannot move anymore? Now, that's just because it's the core of the problem does not mean it's a simple one, because each and every one of us will deal with worry, we will deal with our problems in a different way, and we should never judge. Something that might seem like a little problem to me might seem like the world to my peers or to my neighbors. That's why it makes it so complicated to be simplifying it. It's each and every one of us will deal with differently, and we could never judge what causes it, isn't it?
Well, we have now massive scientific evidence that most mental health issues, they can be managed. We can handle them, and we can deal with them if we only know that we are capable of doing so, and we have help in understanding the different problems and issues, and not that it's easy and that it's a matter of choice only, but we can handle things if we are very aware about them, if we know them precisely, and we have a very clear diagnosis that explain to ourselves how to handle them, how to administrate them. But most people do not know that, or they refuse to administrate their own problems. And I think Spiritism is especially helpful in that sense, because there's a biblical sentence that is very present in Dostoevsky's work, which is human heart has a hole the size of God. And until we understand that material products and success and people cannot fill this hole, we will fail, and we will remain in a self-made state of suffering, of confusion. Actually, before suffering, there is a lot of confusion usually, and we have to help bringing to this culture, to this society, a new notion of how to be fulfilled, how to experience the infinity of God, wisdom, and the infinite intelligence, the perfect goodness and wisdom of God, in a rational sense that can be accommodated to the modern scientific mentality. And churches are failing in providing that, because they many times have a sort of anti-modern approach, which is incompatible with modern life with higher education and so. And scientific mentality, when it is too positivistic or utilitarian, is also failing in doing that, because this mentality has a tendency of rejecting the humanistic approach to our lives, to the purpose of life, to the meaning of life, to God, and so on, to moral life. And one thing that we have to be courageous of doing is to talk about that, the necessity of the spiritual dimension, of a religious dimension in the broadest sense of religion that we can possibly imagine, and the role of the spiritual dimension of our lives in the, the building, the construction of a new society, a new model of being, a new model of consciousness that are still to be worked. We are not succeeding in making this step, and that's why we are discussing climate change, tools that are very dangerous, that we cannot handle, that we cannot be completely responsible about, because we don't we didn't make this humanistic movement to prepare us and to make ourselves compatible with all these exterior changes in the material world.
Yep. I think what obviously you're bringing ties in really closely to what I actually had written down in the script to talk about. Anyway, I think my script just got leaked out to everyone. Perhaps, I don't know, ChatGPT sent it to you all. But you know, Natasha, you mentioned about the Mental Health Awareness Week, which was obviously back in May, and exactly around that time, we always have lots of articles being published saying, how we need to take better care of ourselves, and we need better sleep, we need more sleep, we need daily activities, daily hobbies, spiritual activities, human touch as well. So the last question really I have for today is, what have you guys seen which can be of benefit to help people improve their mental well-being? And obviously we've talked about spiritism as being a channel as well, a pathway as well, but what else have you personally seen as something that can benefit people who want to boost their mental health?
I'll just start with something which I came across, which I think is a bit interesting. I was contemplating retiring from my job, because I'm coming to that age where I'm able to do that. Not that I'm going to give up working. I have a million projects that I want to do when I don't need to be earning, a salary. As Natasha was saying, in a universe where I get enough money for my daily life, and I can actually do the work that I want or enjoy. But one of the things that they were saying about retirement is that you need to be very careful, because some people, if you have what is the role of work in your life, in your self-identity, and if you don't go through that process of thinking about that, and you retire and you don't have a project, it says people can be dead within 2 years, particularly if they were men and they had a high-powered job and all kinds of things. Just thinking the impact on the mental health of things like work, or what does work mean in your life, and how does that place you in terms of society, about your relationships. So one of the things they were saying is, when people retire, they become isolated, because work is a place where you have your colleagues. As much as you might not think that you get on with them or you argue and anything, that is a daily contact with other human beings, and that we need to have that contact with human beings. And if we suddenly stop that work and we stay at home alone, it will affect our mental health. So having that awareness of the importance of relationships, of human contact, especially coming out of COVID, where so many people have been affected in their mental health because of the withdrawal of human contact. whether that contact includes touching, embracing, and you can pay to have a massage, to have it done therapeutically. But, having a hug with a friend, with a relative, how that really makes a difference, releasing the hormones that will give you pleasure and well-being to counterbalance the ones of stress and so on. So we are always, we've got both sort of universes of possibilities within us. And thinking that, yes, there may be robots and artificial intelligence, but are they able to give us a hug and to touch us in a way that we feel nourished on that level? It's funny how the topics all kind of became entwined in some way, but it's that mammal body, as Natasha well said, that needs touch, that needs heat, that needs that contact. If you look at the mammals, in the wild, and any David Attenborough movie or program, you will see how they're licking each other, they're grooming each other, they're having that physical contact, and so we need that as well. We are not robots, we are human beings, but we are using a mammal body on a physical earth. So having that awareness of who we are and where we are, what's happening, it can really help us to put things in perspective. I don't anyway want to take away from medical treatments or pharmacology and things like that, which all absolutely have their place. But just thinking about the mental well-being of each one of us, what can we do to improve that? And just to have that awareness that I actually need human contact. So how am I going to develop that? Working together, doing projects in the community, all kinds of different things can put me in contact with other human beings, and that will definitely benefit my mental well-being.
And you're talking about obviously meeting people and hugging, and obviously COVID meant that we couldn't do that for quite a while. So I'm quite a huggy person. One of the great things about having spiritist groups is when people arrive, you give them a nice big hug, you welcome them. So for 2.5 years to not do that on once, twice a week, and not see friends and family to give them a hug, you think, wow. And now we're in this post-pandemic phase where we can do that, but many people are still sort of quite cautious. Many people are still like one step back, like, okay, hug, but just quick. So it is a difficult thing, and we do need that touch from time to time.
Yeah, we may have get used to this social distance in an unhealthy way, possibly, and I am a bit afraid with a future society in which we always choose what we want to do, because we all have colleagues that we would never meet if we were not forced to meet, if we could have a choice, and to some extent that's psychologically healthy, that's good for our personality, that we are forced to meet some people that not harmful people obviously, but some people that are difficult to deal with, or that we have difficulty in come along with. And I am very afraid of a progressive isolation, progressive individualism, and I think COVID boosted that. That's a vice that was previously in our society, in our way of life, in the modern industrial, post-industrial way of life. And COVID may have boosted that in a very weird way that we have to deal with now, and we have to overcome in order to again get in touch with people, with reality, with nature.
Yeah, I can see what you mean, Humberto. If you can choose never to deal with a person that you don't really see hand to hand, what type of society we are creating, isn't it? We are never going to be learning how to deal with conflict. That's not healthy at all. relationships are part of ourselves, and we all know that we cannot. No man is an island, and no man should be living in absolute isolation. And therefore, that relationship is very important. I was picking up and thinking of the answer that you just gave, the question that you just gave, Adam, and I agree with all the points that Anne was saying. I think that human touch is definitely something that is important. Relationship, let's put it this way, on a more general way, relationships are important for our mental health. I think that also the disassociation, it's a big word, basically to detach ourselves to the role that we play, on the case that you were mentioning, and on this idea of retirement. But I think that in many other situations where people are made redundant from a company, or for one reason or the other, life changes in a way that they now are detached. They have to be separated for something that they saw themselves in. It may either be the breadwinner of the house, a worker, a father, a daughter. I think that one way to try to overcome that, it's a very deep, be very deeply aware that I am more than the role that I'm playing. I am more than the responsibilities that I have in my plate. That sounds very simple, but it's very complicated to do, because we are all very attached to our roles and our responsibilities. But I think that thinking on a different one, that to improve mental health, on my case, I think it's silence. I think that to silence to some people can be very bad, because they are lonely and they would welcome some noise and warmth in their life. But to other people, and I'm going to be putting myself in this category, just even if temporarily, but that's where I am, that have a very high-paced environment around me, silence is definitely a plus, and we should be seeking moments of silence, and not only silence around us, but silence within, and those are harder to get. Those little breaks where we can actually take a deep breath and look around us and think, what is it that I'm thinking? What is it that I need to do? And try to be very mindful when I'm thinking and doing those things that need to be done. I think that seeking those spaces, it also allows us to be creative. Some people might call it boredom. It is true. If we're sitting with nothing else to do, our mind will immediately try to be distracted, because our mind does not like to be bored. So if we have those 10 minutes before bed, instead of going to sleep, we are going to be looking into an article, we're going to be reading a book, we are going to be checking Facebook, checking social media, or seeing a movie, anything really. But those moments of boredom, those moments of silence, I think they are pivotal, and they are very much overlooked. If I can only sleep 6 hours, why would I go to bed early? If I can function pretty well with 4 hours, I might just as well catch up with my social media before going to bed. I'm only going to sleep at 2 o'clock in the morning. Is that really healthy? How is that really contributing to my mental health? So I think that one thing that is overlooked is having this moment of stepping back, removing distractions, removing noise, and removing mental noise as well, and just trying to sit and evaluate why I'm doing the things that I'm doing, and what is it that I'm actually doing. It's hard to do that when our mind is busy and when there's too much noise around us. So that's my 5 cents.
I would say, in my personal impression about that the quality of your of your time with yourself is proportional and in harmony with the quality of your time with others. So these moments of silence and loneliness in the positive sense, they are much in harmony with the quality of your social life, and vice versa. So it is more difficult to have a flourishing social life if you never have moments of isolation, moments when you can think and be with yourself and enjoy yourself in a healthy way, obviously.
Yeah, reminds me of question 919 in the Spirit's book, Know Thyself. You know, how well do we truly know what we are, how we are, what we react to? We need all these moments of social contact. We need the moments, like I said, moments of silence for us to truly know how we can react to each other, to various circumstances. Any last thoughts?
I think I'm going to be picking up one last thought that is not mine. Can I pick up a thought that is not mine?
You should.
So I'm going to pick up a thought that actually is from Allan Kardec. And that dates back to 1872. In the Genesis, there's a chapter called The Sign of Times. And on the Sign of Times, the chapter says that humankind had made incontestable progress regarding their intelligence and material improvement and progress. Mind you, this was in 1872. But the book, at the end of that chapter, it says that what people needed nowadays was not the development of intelligence, but the elevation of sentiment. And for that, they must do away with everything that would incite selfishness and pride. And I think that for me, it summarizes most of the topics that we were talking today. Most of the issues that we face in society nowadays, be it the risks associated with the development of new technology, be it the natural disasters associated by the change of the climate around us, be it the mental health pandemic that we have nowadays, because mental health now becomes it's a problem of society more than a problem of it, as in addition to the problem of the individuals. All of that can be going back to us taking a look of how it is that we see the problems around us. And once we are aware of it, how is it that we deal with it? How much of it is my responsibility? How much as it comes back to my own mistakes? Because sometimes it's very easy for us to look and say that the society is the problem, forgetting that I am part of that society. Picking up what Anne was saying, that the ocean is made out of tiny little droplets of water, and I am one of those. So how do I see that problem? How do I deal with it? And what am I going to do with that information?
I love that thought. I think we spoke much about taking and assuming responsibility, about our initiative, about moral commitment, and the notion that it also involves a different awareness about our role in the world, about our role in society. And probably the most incorrect way of solving any of these big problems we are discussing today is to propose technical solutions. There are sometimes very obvious, but people just don't are not prepared, or they just don't do it. They just don't make this movement. They don't make this step in the direction of a significant change. And to face these challenges, our intelligence will probably or certainly find very quick solutions and good solutions, but they will remain as dead tools until we want to use them until we want to use social media for good things and to promote human beings instead of arguing with them, or instead of praising ourselves for what we made and things like that. We can use artificial intelligence to be more productive instead of substituting other people or ourselves. We can improve our planet's environment instead of destroying and crushing it all the time. Probably it will take a while to make this movement. It's not going to happen tomorrow or next week. We will have to deal with the consequences of our preference for vice and selfishness and pride in the mass scale, and we will have to pay the price for that for a couple decades more or a couple centuries more. But eventually we will feel that this change is needed, that this change is possible, and that we actually want it. When we want to live in a better world, we will probably be perfectly capable of making it.
Well, thank you all for all your thoughts on these topics today. It's been a pleasure to have this time with you all, but it is time for us to start to wrap up. And therefore, Anne, do you have anything for us for a moment of reflection?
Yeah. So I took it here from this little book, which is called Recipes for Peace by the Spirit Joanna de Ângelis by the medium Divaldo Franco. And it's chapter 5, and it's called Haste. So I'll just read it to you. It says, impulsiveness is the cause of many iniquities that afflict humanity. Anxious behavior leads to states of disturbance, generating perfectly avoidable suffering. Beneath the stigma of anxiety, attitudes are fomenting inadequate results for inner edification. For this very reason, the practice of calmness is indispensable for a harmonious journey vis-à-vis the perplexities imposed by modern times. Patience teaches to await the results of any accomplishments which cannot be anticipated. The rhythm of time is unalterable, and this is why things happen naturally, within time spans that cannot be changed. At the instance of haste, mankind hears and sees by way of deformed vision, which disturbs matter even further, and with clouded discernment they plunge over cliffs of misfortune. There is a time to sow, and therefore, understandably, a time for harvesting will also come. It is useless to try to precipitate the facts of life between germination and the filling out of the grain. In the moral field, the mechanism is similar. Each phase has its own period of time, each occurrence its proper moment. So gather your moral strength in disciplined equilibrium and do not precipitate events that should follow their natural course. Await that only that which is in your incarnation program will in fact happen. Do not suffer in anticipation, propitiating states of anxiety and bitterness which could otherwise be avoided. When suffering befalls you, face up to it with dignity. Await what is necessary in the way of life's development and for personal recovery in the accounting of spiritual values. Jesus said, "The leaves of the trees only fall by the will of God," proving that every event is subordinated to the laws that command the phenomena of the cosmos. Likewise, in your individual world, events occur that you deserve and need. Be patient, therefore, and never be precipitated. You will regret the passionate and the anxious decision, but never the one born from calmness and ponderation. If it seems impossible to bear in peace the problems that afflict you, resort to prayer and be soothed by the blandishment of the interchange between prayer and divinity, which replies by pacifying you and saving you from haste and recklessness.
Thank you, Anne. Well, folks, that is it for this episode of Insightfully Speaking. Please remember to tell all your friends about this show, and remember, all details about Kardec Group and our activities are on our website, www.kardec.org.uk, and you can find the episodes of Insightfully Speaking on YouTube and your favourite podcast station. And remember, always follow Kardec Group on our social media channels. So it leaves me to say a great big thank you to my co-hosts Anne Sinclair and Humberto Schubert, and a thank you to our guest Natasha Aragão. My name is Adam Osborne, and we hope you can join us next time for another episode of Insightfully Speaking, looking at the world from a spiritist perspective.